Hi, so this project is called Surface Design, in which you're going to take, it could be a shoe, a backpack, something that has a plain surface, and you're going to be adding a pattern. And you're also going to be changing the color. So in this one, the original shoe just looked like this. It was just a plain old greenish blue shoe. And I have a layer that has like these peacock feathers, and then I have another layer, actually two layers, in which I added some color to the shoe laces. So you're going to have some choices to make. First of all, what is your subject going to be? And then also what kind of patterns and colors are you going to modify for your design? So what I set up for you guys in to practice this in Google Classroom are a couple of images that I'm going to ask you to download and practice with to start. So just to review, to download, you're going to open it up. Then you go to the three buttons on the top right where it says More Actions, and you're going to open it in a new window, and then you should see the button for download. They're going to be downloaded in your downloads folder, so at some point you want to get them over to your Google Drive, and then you want to open them up in Photopea. So now I'm in Photopea, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the three images that are available in Classroom. So I randomly picked, I wanted to do one backpack and I wanted you to have one shoe. So this backpack is sort of like a khaki-ish green. The sneaker is red, and then this pattern has a bunch of different colors to it. You don't necessarily, I don't expect you to use these for your design, but these are just to practice. So to start off with this shoe right here. First thing you're going to do is you're going to think about where you want the pattern to go. So if you notice here, you'll see that there's this big piece of canvas right in the center, right at us. And then there's another piece of canvas that is used for the tongue. Now I don't know this particular brand of shoe, so I don't know if there's maybe it's made out of two pieces of canvas. But the point is, wherever you decide to put your pattern, you want to put it on an entire piece of canvas or material or whatever the shoe is or the backpack's made out of. So in this case, what that means is I'm going to put the pattern along this whole big piece. So we want to make a piece of this pattern the same size and shape as this piece right here. And you can see we're going to be having to remove some area, for example, where the logo is, but then also where these grommets are. You're not going to have the pattern extend on top of these grommets here and here, the metal pieces, nor am I going to have them on top of the laces, nor am I going to have them on a different piece of material like where the tongue is. Okay, so you're going to bring this picture over to this picture as by way of a layer. So to do that, you're going to use the Move tool, and you are going to drag this image up on top of the image that you want it, where you want it to be, and then you drop it. And you notice that it's represented as another background. I hit Transform Controls so I can make this a size that I can work with. If you don't want to mess with the proportion, depending on the pattern that you have, if you want it to be in the same proportion, to hold that proportion, you're going to hit right in here, that button, and it keeps the aspect ratio. Okay. Now if you want to keep that aspect ratio every time you're changing the size, hold down the Shift button as you're changing the size. So what I'm doing is I'm orienting this so it's in the right place, and I'm making it the proper size. You don't want it to be too small so it won't cover that area, but I don't want this to be too big where the elements of the pattern, you don't see a lot of the elements of pattern, they're too big. So you can make some choices there. Okay. Now, there's a new technique, a new tool that we're going to be using, and it's called the mask. And the mask is like a screen. I spoke of this in class. So basically if you add a mask to a layer, what you can do is you can remove the visibility of that whatever's in that pattern, in that layer, and then you can also put back that visibility. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So to make a mask on a particular layer, you're going to go down to the bottom where the layers, where all these options are down here, and you're going to click on this one right here in the middle, and it says Add Raster Mask. Make sure that the background or the image that you want to make a mask for is the one that is highlighted. So you can see here when I clicked on it, it gave me this rectangle. This is the mask, and you can see that it's linked to this layer. Okay, so if I click on this background and make sure that it's highlighted, just like that, make sure that mask is highlighted, and I'm going to go to the brush, and it works like this. If I brush black on this mask, it's going to remove the visibility of the pattern. If I paint white on it, it's going to bring it back. So to demonstrate, I'm going to make sure that my brush is big. I hit the brackets next to the P, make a nice big mask, big brush. I'm also going to double check my brush. I want to use a harder brush. And I want to make sure that my colors are set to black and white. To do this instantly, you click on the D for default, and it'll make the colors black and white. If I want to switch the colors from black to white, the shortcut is this button right here, or you can hit the letter X on your keyboard. So white will put it back, but now if I go to black, black will remove it from the mask. So again, a couple things that I'm making sure are happening is that I want to make sure that I am on that background, on that square right there. You can see I'm painting black on it. It's not changing the pattern. The pattern's still there. But what it's doing is it's removing the visibility of it. Okay, so you can see I'm removing way, way too much. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit to a section right over here. And I'm now going to switch over with my brush tool. I'm going to switch over to white. So I hit the X, switches it over to white, make the brush a little smaller, and you can see now what it's doing is it's putting that mask, it's putting back that white on the mask. White reveals it, black takes it away. So if you mess up, if you paint too much, you can hit X, and then you can remove it with the black. Okay, so I do expect you guys to do this very, very carefully. So that's how we're going to start off. Okay, there are going to be a couple of tricks that I'm going to share with you in another video, but this one's good enough to present to get you started. Okay, one last thing before I go off now is, give me a minute, let's zoom back out. So right now I just have it set where this particular layer, I have the opacity set at 40%. I'm going to bring it back up to 100. And then you can really see where some of the areas that I really need to redo. So this is going to help me keep everything really, really nice and crisp and neat. But this isn't giving off the illusion. How you get the illusion is you take this layer, just like how we did with the Splash of Color project, and you change it to overlay. So what you're going to end up seeing is this image where you can start to see the pattern. Now, since this is since this is an image that, or the surface is red, it's really overpowering the colors quite a bit. You can see when I'm putting this pattern back, it's hard to see all those bright colors. And it has to do with, it has less to do with the actual pattern that I'm applying. It has more to do with where the pattern is being placed. Since this is such a bright red, the red is just overpowering. So what I can do, this is just a decision, you might like the way this looks and you would have no problem with having this as a done project, but if you want, you can remove the color, the red, off of this background. To do that, hit Command U, and you can bring down the saturation all the way down. So what that does is it removes all the color from this background image, but what it does is it allows the colors in the pattern to really come through. Now this is just going to be one of those things that you can do depending on the subject, right? So if you have a very colorful pattern, getting rid of the color in the background where this colorful pattern is being placed will really make those colors stand out. Okay, so you can see that looks pretty realistic, and if I continue this process and get that really, really trimmed up really nicely, it's going to have that really realistic effect that this pattern has been printed on the canvas. Okay, so I'm going to start you off with this particular tutorial, and I'll combine it with another tutorial on another day, you know, maybe after the weekend, but this is enough to get you started. Okay, so the next video that I'll show at another time is going to have to do with the backpack. Because the backpack's on an angle, we're going to use some different tools to apply the pattern on there. Okay? So once you have used your mask and you made a really nice looking mask, like nice and clean, you can double check your work. If you change it back from normal to from overlay back to normal, then this will allow you to see your edges, and you can see if you've done things, you know, nice and clean and crisply. You can zoom in and double check your work, and you can modify it as you need to. If you think that you missed, I think I missed a spot over here, so I'm going to go back to the mask and clean up this area over here a bit. So this can just help you double check your work. So you can definitely see that I switched off the pattern. I have more of a linear pattern for this shoe. It's different than what I originally had. I also changed the color of this pattern. Originally it was something a little bit different. So there's just a couple things that you want to keep in mind. If I wanted to add this same pattern to a different part of the shoe, I would have to make a copy of this pattern, and then I would be making another mask for that particular part of pattern. Like if I wanted to put this pattern as another layer as part of, like, if I wanted the tongue to be the same pattern, again, I would have to make a different layer. I would have to add another layer of that pattern and then put a mask on that. Okay, so what I do want to talk about is if my subject was different and it was in a different kind of position. So what I'm talking about is this. Notice that this is the same pattern, a little different color, but notice that it has a bit of an angle. It's on a bit of an angle, so it should look a little bit more believable. It's not straight on like this is. It's not straight. It's not totally horizontal. It's on a bit of an angle. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Right? You could see I was working on it a couple of times. I have a mask for it in the whole bit. So I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to bring this to the trash. I'm going to bring this to the trash. And I'm going to open up the pattern I want to apply, use the move tool, and I bring it up into this picture here. I can make a layer mask anytime I want to with this particular pattern, but I do want to move it somewhat, make it, get it nice and large. And if I wanted this pattern to be in this particular section of my backpack, I would have to take into account what piece of material do I want to put this pattern on. And if I wanted to put it just on this piece of canvas, I would not be putting it onto this trim over here. I would not be putting it over here. Not for this layer. I would have to use a separate layer in order for it to look, otherwise it's really not going to look believable. So right now I'm just getting it to be the proper size, so it's going to fit on that entire piece of material. I can of course squish it down as I want to, but I think something like this looks perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to lower the opacity so I can see the backpack a bit. So you can see the angle that I need to change it. And also what happens is that it gets kind of, it turns quite severely right at the top here. So all of those modifications I can do on this pattern, on this layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be going to Image, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and then there's a couple of ways that you can transform it. If I go to Warp, what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to take these bounding boxes, these areas, and stretch it out. So you can see that if this was going to be wrapped around a specific spot, you could see that I can create that illusion by playing around with these little tools. Now, this does take a little bit of practice, and it takes a little bit of doing. You kind of have to, it's like going to be a trial and error kind of thing. And you can move these lines up and down. There's a bit of a lag on this. So, make it the best I can do here. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm kind of curving it down until it has the effect that I want. Now I am working lower than where this is going to be placed. I'm going to actually put it up here, but I'm working down here. But I can certainly move this later on. That's good. It's going to be something like that. Move this down. Get the look that I want. Like I said, it takes a little practice. It takes some doing. Until you can finally get it the way that you want. You want that to be really flat looking. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to commit to this. So far so good. Now I'm going to move it up. So you can see now it starts to kind of take on that shape a bit. I can always go back and go to Transform. I can try Distort, and Distort's going to allow me to kind of move it around more. And I'm going to try to get that slant going. Edit, Transform, Distort. And what this will allow me to do, you can see it kind of angles it a little bit more. I can angle it a little bit, but I just want it to be kind of matching along that part of the backpack. So in the top it looks like it kind of bent over a bit, and then on the bottom looks like it's kind of in perspective a bit. I'm going to warp it. You can always go back and you can warp more. But again, it's going to be something that you have to kind of play around with, see what kind of effects you can create. Because every time you rewarp it, it's going to set up those lines again. Okay, and I think I'm pretty happy with that. Bring this up a little bit. Okay, so once you have it the way that you want, it's at this point that you can give it a layer mask. You can actually, a little shortcut, I don't know if I did it previously, but if I now click here and I hit Control-I, what it does is it will invert that selection. So now what it did is it made that mask black. It painted it all black. So if I use the black and white, if I use white on that mask, you could see it's bringing that pattern back. So if you find it easier to paint, you know, to have it all black and then just put white in its place where you want it to be, you can do that. I'm going to move the opacity back up again. So you can see that this pattern should look a bit more realistic. Okay, what I can also do is, again, I can use this polygonal lasso tool over here. I have nice straight edges on this backpack. So if I make this selection here of the shape I want, especially when it's geometric like this, it's a bit easier to select that space first. And then paint white, and you can see it stays in that space. So you can use a variety of selection tools to do this. Clean that up later. Change this from normal to overlay. Move my opacity back up. Oops. So you can see this looks pretty good. And once again, by zooming into your picture, that should really help you out to get very accurate. Using small brushes, using the right brush for the job, right? So if it's a small area, use a small brush. If it's a big area, you can use a bigger brush. But this here is going to take a little bit of fine-tuning to get it the way that I want it to look. Let's see. That is all the... This is the line, this is the seam right here. And once again, if I decide to change the pattern, once you make a really nice mask, you can use the mask for a different pattern. Unlink it, take this pattern, bring it over. Wrong picture, right picture, right here. Again, I would probably warp this a bit. I can do that now, or I could do it later. But I could bring this mask over to there and change it from normal to overlay so you can get the general idea. All right. So hopefully that gives you enough information to carry on. One last thing I'd like to cover with you is adding color to your product as well. You can see here I added some surface patterns as well as I colored in some of the straps. So if you look over here at my layers, I have a separate layer and I made it all a solid color, and then I used the mask to color have that color showing through. Now the one benefit to doing it this way is that if I wanted to change the color of anything that I added color to. I can go to this part of the layer and I hit Command U or Control U, and I can move the hue around, and you can see that I can change the color pretty easily and nicely, just like that. Okay. So I'm going to show you how this is done. So once you have your patterns done, you are also going to consider adding a little bit of color. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to color in everything. You might want to just color in certain sections. So you're going to start off with an area that you are pretty sure you want to add a color to. So let's say that I know for a fact that I'd like to add color to this part, this strap right here. Okay. So I can certainly add a new layer, and I could go with the brush, pick a color that I think I'd like to use, and just start brushing the color on, just like how we did with splash of color. Okay, you can put the color on, and then you can use the eraser tool to remove it as you need to. So if you feel comfortable doing it this way, that's completely fine. Stay in the lines, be very careful. You could use the polygonal lasso tool, for example, and you could sort of select the area that you want, where you want the color to go, and then use the brush. And what it'll do is it'll hold that color in that space. Change this from normal to overlay, or you can even try normal to color. If this is the look that you want, then that's fine. You can play around with opacity, and you can even go to Control U and you can change the color around. Now the issue with that is that once you change the color and then you want to color in some other areas, that it's going to be using that original color. So, but you can certainly do this if you wanted to select the new orange color that you have. You can change it to normal, bring your opacity back up, use the eyedropper tool, and select that color so then you can start using it. But what you might want to try is a different method. You may want to try using the layer mask again, making a new layer, instantly making a layer mask on it. Fill the color in this space using the paint bucket, fill the color in that you'd like to use. Okay. Then what you can do is you could change this mask layer to all black. So what it'll do is remove all the visibility of the whole color. So Shift Control I will invert it. So you can see that it changed the color of the mask to black. So it made it all invisible. You can bring it back by painting white on that space. Okay, so it works just like the brush, but if you wanted to remove it, you would just switch from white to black, whether you want to color it or remove it. Change the color to overlay, or you can try color. But what this will allow you to do is you can continue to add color in whatever areas that you'd like. Again, if you wanted to utilize the selection tools, to select areas to add color to. You could do it in this method, or you could just use the brush and just be careful. You know, whatever works for you. So the benefit to having this all in one layer and also using the layer mask is that if you decide to, I know I have to fix this area up, if I decide to change the color, I select the color in the layer and I hit Command U, and I could pick whichever color I'd like to use. And once you find a color that you like, notice that it affects everything, and it's also going to be what I'm going to utilize when I start even adding more colors using the mask. See, it's now using that color all over the place. All right. So you can play around with selecting areas to add color to, and hopefully it brings some visual interest to your design. All right, so I'm looking forward to seeing your designs, and you can always review this video as you need to revisit some of the steps. All right, so have a good time with it. Hopefully you're enjoying it, and see you next time.